Simje tamji to topja lo me yang ta ba zo sang ye ko ba ba ji ne ge ta ba cha ti shi de sa be shi se ne ku ngu sha ju so ma da ji ma ji se de ne sem ba shi.
Let us cultivate bodhicitta motivation. That is the altruistic motivation, seeking complete enlightenment for the sake of all other sentient beings. And with that kind of actual bodhicitta motivation, or the contrived bodhicitta motivation, we should participate in this Lamrim teaching on the stages of the path leading to enlightenment. To give you the blessing of oral transmission of a Lamrim text, let me read about a page or two from this Lamrim text, volume number 2 in the English translation.
Padang pe dong du jarani song du pu chi be me song dong du long de la ti ma ning je je wa da yin rang la yue ba song so de no ning je la wa de no ro du ko ro je la song je ba ma la song je ba shou de da sim je je de lo je ba na rang ge ne ga de ne sim je je ge dong zo ba ra shou mi no la de mo se da je ba ning je ko mo do Simjin Yung Si Re Re Dang Di Tong Yang Tarba Tsam Driba Nyunji Tamji Jenbe Ba Lawa Gu Minu Bi Simjin Ta Yiba Te Sa Yiba Tong Te Da Gi Ne Ga Wa Tong Ta Du Gu Tong Tong Zi Wa Zo Bar Su Shi Gu Nu Nyam Du Samba Na Sangji Nya Ji Yiba Nuba Te Yo Bar Shi Ne Simjin Tong Du Sang Yi Ta Ba Du Bar Ji Nuba Ji Ba Yin Wo Ni Ba Ni Ni Ba Rim Jin Du Zhang Ba Ngu La Sum Xiong Dong Dong Yi Yi Lo Zhang Ba Dong Xiao Shi Dong Yi Lo Zhang Ba Dong Jiang Bi Zhi Bi Bi Sim Ji Ba Ngu Song Tang Bo Li Ni Lo Ji Bi Xi Zhi Ba Dong Lo Ti Bi Ji Bu Ngu Su Tang Bo Li Ni Sim Jin Lo Sim Yong Ba Ra Zhi Ba Dong Dang Ji Yong Ge Na Bo Jin Di Ba Zhou Tang Bo Ni Nga Ri Ji Bi Xiong Zhi Ge Ge Wo Si Ba Xie Ba Da Zhong Zhou Lao So Bi Bi Rin Bo Ba Na Men Di Ren Yang Lang Ma Lo Jiang Wa Xiu Te La Tong Ba Sim Jin Ka Ji La Xia Ji Ka Ji La Dang Mi Chou Li Ji Ba Ga Ni Sim Yong Ba Ma Zhou Na Qiang Ba Ren Jing Ji Wei Jiao Di Chou Ri Jing Di Jie Wei Chou Ri Me Ba La Mi Ni Mi Ji Wei Dang Ni Mu Gong Ba Xiu Dang Yong La Du Jie Dang Yong Zong Zuo Dang Yong Dang Sim Me Dang Yong Song Li Wen Di Ren Ni Me Tang Ma Yin La De Le Sim Jin Dang La Shak Dang La So Ni Mo Me Ba Zhi Bi Na Ba Jie Xie Dang Na Ba Jie Rang Ni Sim Jie Na Ba Jie Xie Jie Dang Rang Ni Sim Jie La Sim Jie La Ba Shak Dang Dang Zhe Ni Sim Yong Ba Ni Song Ba Li De Ni Xi Mo Wen Di Gong Bi Ko Ni Jie Le Tong Mo Ra Yang Tong Mo Mo Ra Pen Yang Ma Da Ne Wa Ya Ma Ji Ba Pa Ma Xie La Mi De Xie Ni Ji Mi De Xie Ni Ji Sha Wa Dang Kong Zhou Wa Se Le De Sim Yong Ba Zhe Ba Xiu De Le Sim Yong Ba Zhe Zhu Na Ma De Ni Min Za Xi La Sim Yong Ba Zhe De Le Sim Yong Ba Ni Wei Sha Dong Gi De Zhe Wa Wen Xiao Ba Xie Zhong Gi Ma Nyong Ba Wu De La Nyong Ni Zha La Sim Yong Ba Gom De De La Ma Nya Ba Ni Ta Ji Du Mi De Ma De Ni Wei Xie Dong Wu De La Du Ni Wei Sim Ji Tang Ji Wei La Wa Sim Yong Ba Gom Mo De La Nyong Ni Sim Ye De La Sim Yong Ba Gom Wu Na De Da Ya La Ji Xie Gom Bi Xiao Da Bo Xie Na Xian Na Ni De Wei Sim Ji Ji Wu Ni Tam Ji Wu Ni Tam Ji De Ba Da Dung Mi De Ba Song Bi Ka Ji La Ni Wa Su Ni Wei Pen Do Ka Ji Ren Wa Su Na Ni Ba Ji Ba Ma Pen Min Ba Mi Xie Bi Mi De Wei So Nya Ba Rang Ge Ngui Ni Ni Tong Wei Ni Kwa Ni Sim Jin Kang La Ka Sim Jin Kang Lin Jie De Da Ge Ni Du Ji Ro Ba Ka Ma Jiu Ka Ya Mi Bi Kang La Mi Ni Sha Ba Sha La Kang La Mi De Dang Sha Nyang Du Sim Nyang Wu Xie Gom Ren Par Ba Du So Yang Ni La Sha Ba La Ni Po Mo Da Sho Ge Shi Wa Le Da Ge Ngun Ji Che No Tam Ji Se Da Jiang Ji Ji Ngun Ji Sha Xi Top Gun Jia Pin Zhu Da Dang Sui Ba Yi Bu Ji Bin Zhu Da Sui Ba Yin Ye Che Jia Che Da Du Jia Ji Sim Ji Sim Jiang Ji Xie Su Ba Da Nga Ren Ni Mi Ji Ni Wei Gao Su Ba Xie Ba Da Da Yin Ta Men Ji Nyu Du Nyu Ni Men Zhu Zhu上把下的天天坐下你个多过，那点小个在那里修就是了。他给咱们都开始的，他上就生气啊的，他开始，我们这边也把结完些的钱的，就是他感觉，你上就生气完了，你影响个他，可拉松的影响个，他的拉松的影响个最猛小个跟桌上，感觉这个哪来吧现在。我写下的咱们到那拉松过呀的，给咱的培训都得培我就送呗，你估计他话写的多了送吧，得当桌菜大关键。你让了呀，你妈的，你年底个影响 부모 뒤다고 요르티 신의 그게 부디야 미장 돈 동야 뽑아도 요 말이 제대 니랑 때가 되어 뒤 뽑아 정주서 버리 요르스다 그래서 뒤다 휴자버 인사이
No. Excuse me. So Geshe read from page 33 to page 37, volume number 2 in the English translation of Lamrim Chemo. And so last time we talked about the certainty of the sequential order through which or by which we cultivate bodhicitta or the spirit of enlightenment or mind of enlightenment. And what we did talk about quite a bit last time was about the need to cultivate great compassion or mahakaruna, nyingji shenpo, yeah, which we kind of put in the center. And then we said, all other practices are related to great compassion. Either they precede the development of great compassion, which means they are the causes giving rise to great compassion, or they are the outcomes, the results of great compassion, because they follow after great compassion. And we also talked about how great compassion gives rise to the wholehearted resolve. That's how they translated here, the laksam, I usually call special willpower or determination. And so from the special willpower, we are able to experience bodhicitta or the mind of enlightenment. And we have also quoted some of the sutra passages to substantiate that presentation. And one of the sort of a narrative example given in the sutra is how when a child falls into the field, maybe mother and other relatives run to that and they're lamenting like, oh my God, somebody help here, the child is drowning in the field. But the father comes and, with his courage, he just jumps right into the field and pulls out his son. So that is to exemplify the wholehearted resolve or the special willpower laksam, that is needed to be able to fire up, or so to speak, generate bodhicitta.
어디 다시도 탁숨계에 가르치겠으나 탁숨계도 다 인생 숙성부터 제상 이니 뒤에 다 뒤에 대화는 거보다 등에 최고선 인생 숙비게 이니 코르블 말나감이 중고를 진 케냐한테 도와서도 다 소소디 토사리에 섬때 되잖아 이는 소소 다된 데가 그러시나 심지 당시도 봐야 심지 지금 이니 이게 상계사 고야니 봐요 말이지 디부고 니라 자좀 받어서 라브에 탈바점 고야 모두 지리야 상계사 고야 니봐요 말이 인다 디 니봐 용기 순도서 제주 좀 셰니 인디 니봐 용기도 상이 냐지래 샷셔도 다 이주의 상이 고토도도 쓰었다 정신 계단으로 도스리 했었다.
So when we develop great compassion for sentient beings and intensifies it, and so then we're able to generate wholehearted resolve or special willpower laksam by feeling personal responsibility towards sentient beings. We see that it's not somebody else's responsibility to help sentient beings get out of suffering situation. As a matter of fact, it is my responsibility. I have the responsibility towards and for sentient beings. And so as we started to feel that sense of responsibility and it started to grow in us, this is how special willpower or the wholehearted resolve started to emerge in our mind. And then realistically checking up with our own abilities, right? Okay, where am I? Yes, now I feel the sense of responsibility. Am I able to deliver my responsibility, so to speak? And so when we make a realistic assessment of our situation abilities, we started to see that forget about me. Even those who are dedicated to find nirvana for themselves, liberation from samsara, even they don't have the kind of wholehearted resolve that is required, in this particular context. Yeah? And somebody who can really shoulder the responsibility of all sentient beings' well-being is an enlightened being, right? So therefore, we see the need to strive for enlightenment, to become Buddha, so that we will be able to sort of deliver our promise, right, and commitment to sentient beings. It's not just going to be, just talking about it, but we are going to walk the talk now. And so as we see those connections, and then the special willpower connects us to the bodhicitta. Yes, I need to find enlightened state in order to fulfill my promise, and this is how special willpower gives rise to, right? It becomes impetus to generate bodhicitta, or the mind of enlightenment.
that 이번 림제 정화 뭐 somsi 현동 동이 로 정화다 상시 동이 로 정화 장비 드부심지 생겨 뭐서 제가 디바인데세야디야 상시 동이다 현동 동이 이체네 디니간 좀서는 이니 카르사 상시 심지고로와 세대 디게 림제디 장 코이니가 고다 현동 동이세야디 심제 현달미가세 런동 동이세 드바세야디 소설 때문에 인 정주 토고야지 기성인 줘서 거기 리바강가 뻔 톱자강가 더요 말이스 랑이라 그나 상지고모 구르세야 줘와 어디래야 저 디니 장아 그러니까 잠비 리브시중고 당벌니 로디시 제외 히드로바스 로디 제외 당벌니 심진 심뇽바다 탑지 영웅은 남바지도 줘 스타티를 간지 따님 데레 다 심뇽바스디 디 따님 디시 따님 세야들와 차당 로고야 따님 줘야지 디 따님 줘서는 이니신의 마시고네 되네 텐텐지 텐소스니 영웅 삼바 용고로와 어디 다 당보 가르고 그래서 알리 마시게 따님 거 그래서 왔다 따님 메나 영웅 삼바 자 용마로와 어디서
So right after page 33, those of you who have English textbook, the next, the following page is an unnumbered page, which captions the 7 cause and effect personal instructions, right? At the bottom of that page, you see the gradual training. That is a major subpoint 2. The gradual training itself has 3 subpoints, or is presented under 3 subpoints. The first one is training the mind to be intent on others' welfare. And second one is training the mind to be intent on enlightenment. And the third one is identifying the spirit of enlightenment, the fruit of the training. And then on the next page, which is number 36, right on the top, the outlines read, training the mind to be intent on others' welfare has 2 subpoints. Number 1, establishing the basis for developing this attitude. And number 2, the development of the attitude of being intent on others' welfare. And now the first subpoint has its own 2 subpoints. Establishing the basis for developing this attitude has 2 subpoints. Number 1, achieving impartiality toward living beings. And number 2, having affection for all beings. So as Geshe explained, that when we look at what is bodhicitta or Chengju in Tibetan, spirit of enlightenment or mind of enlightenment, or whatever you want to translate it into, technically speaking, it is a primary state of mind which is accompanied by 2 types of aspirations or intentions. Yeah. Aspiration, seeking the well-being of other sentient beings, which is translated here as bent upon the intent for the well-being of others, and aspiration seeking enlightenment, one's own enlightenment, or the intent to seek one's own enlightenment as a means to fulfill the end, right? And so which means if we really feel bodhicitta, sort of in a complete sense, then it is accompanied by these 2 types of intent or aspirations, Tibetan called dunba, I would rather say aspirations, so that's why all these subpoints we just laid out are addressing those 2 aspirations or the intents. And so the first one says achieving impartiality toward living beings. And sometimes the Tibetan word Tangyom has been translated as impartiality, sense of equanimity, balanced state of mind, even-mindedness, and many others probably that I don't know. Okay, so it is very important in the beginning for us to cultivate a sense of equanimity, Tangyom, balanced state of mind, and there are many different types of sense of equanimity. The one we are talking about is called Geshe Tangyom. Our recognition of all sentient beings, the Geshe has to be equal in the sense that we need to see all beings as being on an equal level, okay, footing. And so that is, so to speak, a ground preparation work for developing, practicing the series of things for developing a bodhicitta, right? Once we train our mind to have that sense of impartiality or the sense of equanimity towards sentient beings, now we're able to establish the fact there is a mom and child relationship among sentient beings, right? Mother and child relationship among sentient beings, and of course we have the image of the really loving mother who sacrifices everything for the child. And if that's the case, then we can easily remember the kindness of the mother. And then what really logically follows from that is, yes, I need to repair the kindness of mother. And then we develop a sense of that special love. I just call it special love, just so that I don't have to repeat a long sentence. It's Yung Champa in Tibetan. To be able to see, others as being very dear and close to our heart and mind and soul. Maybe I shouldn't use the word soul in Buddhism. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. And so from that we can cultivate, compassion, special willpower and bodhicitta, right? That's the whole mapping out, the bodhicitta routing here, we can see.
Oh, dear, that's the matter. Thing, Masheval, Tanyum, that Tanyum to the Tantagasi, Tatanganzo, Daniel person to you, Kajira. So they use the last of course, they was some same young Jetoya.
No.
So the Jetoya, think I was in any that Kibichundu Garcia, Jawa Toma Gazi. In so the Jawatama, Jawatama seems in the Yidin, and then some of Dacia, some of Nyansia, Ganga, Jigwa Mother Big Kasa. Toma, some of anything Yerisha, you didn't show Mara. Tatanga, Yerisha, because the nigger so that you never show the Dacia. In Nika Pento, Atel, Nyansia, Nika Kai no Kaiman, Parmas Shagora.
No.
Said that this said the on the chain, Tata Shazanja to Gigora. So that the Chatan the guy that said that it's a moment I didn't the Dacia, Daddy in Yan shares. The Gonit has some thousand W and the Coatama Jolly and Tashi do this yet. Kasha, Pasha like Maldi, Tim Kaza. Give it the Ubondilan, getting in, she does all. But the Kaji Koalia, Yang Tommy, you are Yidimi was saying. Ye doyer or two something. She did that. When it has a Janvina, that seems like a Chipadi or Kadisha, Kaji Dogus later go Marata. So we rebel on the tongue in Shagora. Or the Gongo is what that.
So where it all starts? Preparing the groundwork, right? This is where the homework starts, I guess, as a practitioner. That we need to cultivate a sense of equanimity or impartiality or equal treatment in today's modern language of all sentient beings. Now that seems to be not a too difficult concept to understand, yes, but when it comes to doing it, and we face a lot of challenges. The reason is because we are confined to our experiences of this lifetime, right? This is the only lifetime we know about, right? We don't remember before and after, and we even don't know they exist or not, right? This is our predicament. So in this life, as we look at sentient beings, broadly stated are categorized into three kinds, rather the friends, meaning the relatives and the dear ones and the near ones and the loving ones and all that. And then the enemies, right? You don't like them, you hate them, you want to kill them, all of them bunched together as enemies. And then there are the strangers or the neutral beings, right? I don't know who they are. Do I care? I don't, right? So that category of beings. So as those categories do exist, right, in this life, and our attitudes towards them are very different, isn't it? When we see friend and dear one, like, over here, right? And we see the enemy like, oh my gosh, right? Can I do something to give you a punch or something? He didn't say that, but. Yeah. And then we see a neutral being is indifferent attitude, right? Whatever. My students love to say whatever. So that's whatever people there. So our attitude is not really equal towards sentient beings. We are very partial and biased the way we see sentient beings, right? And because we see them differently, we treat them differently. Okay? So when we say that, okay, we have to all see them equally treated, like, really? How do I do this? Well, I mean, that is a challenge. When it comes to doing it as a challenge, not as a concept per se. And this is why, we have to go back to what we have learned about and talked about before in the context of, maybe small scope practitioners and the middle scope practitioners, right? We talked about how we have been in samsara for too long, isn't it? Okay? And so as we have been in samsara for so long, that means we have taken innumerable rebirths, right? Like it or not, good, bad, and in between kind of rebirths. And so in many of those cases, we were born from mothers, okay? And so we had relatives of different kinds in different lifetime, yeah? And so when we look over that sort of a life before and, this kind of a rebirth framework, then it started to make more sense, isn't it? That how can we treat all sentient beings equal? Those sentient beings have become our dearest and best friends, kind of a trusted confidant, right? And then they become the worst kind of traitors and, kind of really, they cheated and did everything, bad they can imagine to us, so they become enemies. Yeah? And then there are those like who just don't care what we do, the strangers. So these relationships we have with sentient beings, right, the good and the bad and in between, have been, right, going over many, many lifetimes. So friends become enemies, enemies become friends, strangers become enemies, strangers become friends, so there is no fixed certainty about our relationships with each other in samsara. Yeah. And so if that's the case, if all have become our friends, all have become our enemies, all have become strangers, so who are we kidding? Now who is the enemy here, right? It's all same. So from that perspective, we started to see, like from a sort of a, maybe if I'm allowed to use that language here from my studies, called systems perspective, larger macro level perspective, then we say, now we cannot get overly attached to our friends and relatives now because they could have been our enemies and strangers before, or those who are giving us some hard time now, maybe they might have been our best friends before, right? So even in this lifetime, things shift and change and flip-flop and all of that, right? So this tells us about the relationship, uncertainty relationships in samsara. So from that perspective, we may be able to see, yes, no reason to get attached, obsessively attached to some, or hate the others like anything, or just ignore a bunch of beings, okay? And remember, I think some time ago, maybe it was quite a bit time ago, where I think it came based upon a sutra, which depicted, I think Shariputra is the one who really witnessed this, right? And so somebody was holding a child very dearly on the left, right? And eating a meat or fish or whatever, right? And there's a dog trying to get a piece of rice, chasing the dog away. But when the Shariputra looked at this, this is so, I shouldn't say funny, this is so tragic situation. What you are eating is the reincarnation of your father who was kind to you, yeah? And what you're trying to chase away, the dog who was trying to get a piece of something, what you're eating, is your kind mother before. And the one you are holding so dearly in your love was your enemy. Right? So you're like, wow, this is really interesting here, isn't it? And so that's the story of our life, how, our relationships, change in samsara.
Oh, dear, that's Thomas Kersa. Simje Kajila Dani, Simje Kajila Shai, Kajila Kersa, Kajila Dani, Shoyu Javagan, Simyomba, Madonna Chamba, the Ninja Shori Jendu, Jevi, Shori Mebala, Many, Mejev, Tanyugo, Tanyugo, Tata, so that nearly big Pemberley Chambashiva Karisanico, near the penny star with tea, you think you were. That daddy called Nevasia, some of the so that nurse kids, in ticket channy, and call ya 내기야 상도 거고 봐.
No.
제가 이거다 또 편을 산데 사단 제외이나.
No.
얘네 심지어 강가 편을 시면 찍바 쳐고 봐.
No.
그래와.
Bloody.
다 지도 찍바 당간지 마도 찍바 쳐야다. 근데 그거는 약을 고면 다 그니 강가 찍바를 지 토메기다 주말 봐.
No.
어디 다 사이도 그 넘버를 해서는 인시는 마셔도 공부해서 거다.
No. So if you don't cultivate a sense of impartiality or sense of equanimity towards sentient beings, then what? Right, this question. Is that in the first, that means, whatever love and compassion we have or we cultivate, they are going to be very biased love and compassion, isn't it? And those who are close and dear to us, because they have benefited us, maybe, supported us, so we love them. But our love is very biased, right? And those who have given us hard time or said something bad things, so now we don't like them, so we see them as our enemies, right? And we wish them something bad happened to them, or maybe something, okay? And so therefore, even our love and compassion can become very biased love and compassion. And so as I said earlier, if we look from the, rebirth kind of a perspective, then all sentient beings have honestly been equal to us. They have been our friends, enemies, and strangers. And of course, for beneficial reasons, we should cultivate the positive thinking that they have been our best friends, isn't it? Right? So treat them all as a friends rather than, okay, now if they've been our enemies, okay, see them. He didn't say that, but don't go there, right? My first footnote. And so it's just a matter of time, isn't it? As we said, in this life we have parents, but in the past life maybe they have not been our parents, somebody else. So it's just a matter of time. Otherwise, all sentient beings have been, in all sorts of relationships with us, and therefore there is really no sound and good reason to say that I'll treat them better than the others, because that's all because of our limited experience in this lifetime.
어디 가서 고물 샤워서 땅 가서 배 고물 샤워 땅님라 뒤에 땅님도 소와 땅님 세메 땅님 숨래 된 치마이라 대래 심진나라 차당라서 비 뉴모 메버지비 남바진 시당 랑이 심진라 심진 차당 당 체네 심진바 니수 송발래 된 치마워서 대다 가지도 땅님시도 있잖아 아니 뒤에 다니면서 소화 다닌다 되듯이 세메 다니면서 뒤배지 찍방 마이 그 님바 찍바래 돼 뒤에 다니는 시다는 지래도 세메 다니면서 어떤 소샤가 뒤는데 이 세메 다니는 시기래 다들 차단가야 뒤에 공자 뒤에 쓰면서 다 차단가야 될라야 소소면 강사 현다길 소소면 차단자야 가야지다 소소 강사 현달 바밍 차단 소소 차단 파가야 니요리 디나시는 단단히 소주 강사 현달면 차단 가야 되래서 현다 율 가야 돼 다다지마도 에네 비게 그래서 총다 주주도 니몸에 땡이서야 돼 곰니 심지 현달인데 다지말 미베 에네 차단도 깨머지 가야죠로 어디 말이지 단단히 소주 율 심지 현리면 소주바 율 차단 가야 되래서 다다디 니몸에 땡이서야 돼 소주면 현다 율 차단 가야로 와 어디는 단단히 소주 율 차단 가야 돼 인생이
So we're in the middle of page 36 under the caption Achieving Impartiality Towards Living Beings. And so that, as we said before, there are different types of impartiality or sense of equanimity, tangyum in Tibetan. Number one, they translate it as equanimity with respect to application. We call it dushe tangyum in Tibetan. The feeling of impartiality, Tibetan call it chorwa tangyum. And the third one is immeasurable impartiality or immeasurable sense of equanimity. That's what we call seme tangyum. Now, of these three types of impartiality, the one we're talking about right now here is the immeasurable sense of equanimity or immeasurable impartiality here. And as Geshe explained, that we can think in two different ways how to deal with afflictive emotions. Now, one is like, we have afflictive emotions in our mind, right, towards or in relation to others. So how can we deal with those emotions? Or what can we do, for others so that other people don't experience their afflictive emotions towards us, right, or the other beings? But here we are focused on one's own. How do I deal with my afflictive emotions? And this is where we said sense of immeasurable impartiality or immeasurable equanimity can temporarily help us to deal with attachment and hatred towards other sentient beings. But for example, in the case of like how can we help others not to experience certain afflictive emotion towards, like the example Geshe has given is in the case of arhats or the arahants, right? Whether you go with Sanskrit or Pali, so it's same. Sometimes they cultivate something called meditative absorption free of afflictive emotions, right? Nyumo maybe thing is in Tibetan, right? Meditative absorption free of afflictive emotions. By doing that, so they are able to assist others, so that other people do not, for example, hate them or generate anger towards them, because what are these arhats doing, right, kind of thing. They sort of maybe block, help sort of that mind. So there are all these different practices, how to deal with our own emotions and how to help others deal with their emotions, kind of thing. No.
Oh, this is that's up. Jeda today, that he gonna say that Tanyum Gungo using the Tanyum the Gumbala, Tom McDavid with Sinata Lela, the Sina, Tongo Gumdus and social Danyakam, Parma, Pendunta, so that set up. And tell Ben Shatam, because she remember a lot of you didn't say, and we have all said, tell Tanyum we would get to do, and today, Yella mean she. That Yell mean and Shatam got out and a dull mean. Tinipa Gyeltsen seems that I'm dealing with those Congress.
No, sure. Now, in terms of actual practice of cultivating immeasurable sense of impartiality or immeasurable sense of equanimity, is first we should start with imagining somebody who is what we call neutral, stranger, neither our friend nor our enemy, right? And think about our attitude towards this person and develop a sense of equanimity to this person, and to all others we categorize as neutral beings, the strangers, right? Parma in Tibetan. Parma doesn't mean stranger, it means like in between, we call it Tibetans. And then once we have developed quite a good sense of impartiality towards them, now we try to see whether we can extend this towards those who are dear to us, our friends, right? So work with few, and then started to include more of our friends, category this. So we develop sense of impartiality towards them. And then we extend it to somebody who we see as our enemy, and we don't like it, right? And work with our mind, and then we slowly add more from that category. So it's in this way that we started to extend the scope of our meditation, so that eventually we are able to include, right, everybody, all sentient beings in the scope of immeasurable sense of equanimity. So that's the way to do the practice.
Oh, dear Chedon, Yell because Chabunyum Canyon was called Shabashusha, the Kosi Chanyum Marva. Dalia in the same way that takes an Simum go Karsa, the Yum Togo Marva. Said that didn't take you didn't get in the court, get caught on to the power, Cutting shelter, any penny the Ganga, you think some indications on the Karsa. Any Dajin Pazun Ganga, any became symptom Johnson. And in seems that time and the bounce to in the Gumiades.
So our challenge with regard to cultivating a sense of impartiality or equanimity towards friends is because our experience with them is we are attached to them, isn't it? So that's why our perception and experience are biased in this sense. So here really we have to think in terms of how, they have not always been our best friends, right? They have been, strangers or enemies, and so they did other things as well. So thinking about those things in samsara over many lifetimes, we are able to kind of how should I say, maybe slowly work with our attachments towards them and see them more in an impartial way. With the enemy, our greatest challenge is really our anger and hostility towards them, isn't it? So then here we think about how in many lifetimes within samsara, they have been our best friends and they sacrificed for us, they helped us, they benefited us, isn't it? They have not been our enemies forever and forever. Okay? So think about their kindness and sacrifices made for us over many other lifetimes. Now we started to feel close towards them, isn't it? So we are able to overcome our anger and hostility towards them. That's how we try to develop a sense of impartiality towards them. So as we work with these three different beings, right, starting with the stranger or the neutral being, then with a friend, then with the enemy, then we slowly extend the scope of our meditation to incorporate more and more beings.
다시 구미한테 됐어도 가서 이니 유대인이 되지 인식을라 심지응원이 삼로탄 구미하지다 소중원이 삼로탄 구미하지 다 심지응원 구미한테 가서는 심지단지 대화되어서 능에면도가 찍과찍하는 말 이제 콘도피게야 뒤파서 개발도 육토고 뭐 어디 유대 찍세 또 소중원에서 심지 탐지 네 다이는데 니 팬다이는데 정원때에 갈가지는 소설이야 까디 신사를 매와 끼어 동안 매대가 까디 님고 봐. 까디 님 제도다 인 총이야 말하다.
So we can think about two reasons, or we can think about reasons from two different perspectives rather, to cultivate a sense of impartiality or sense of equanimity. One is from the perspective of others. What do others want really? And when we look at sentient beings, everybody wants happiness and nobody wants suffering or pain, isn't it? So in terms of those wishes, we and all sentient beings are exactly the same thing. Unless we know a sentient being who really likes troublesome pain, okay, then we can say, okay, there's another exception here. No, we don't. Right? Everybody wants goodness, happiness, and all that. And everybody doesn't want any kind of headache problem and suffering. So therefore, from the point of view of the sentient beings, right, they're seeking the same thing, right? So how can we treat them differently when they have the same wishes, right? That's one reason, perspective. The other perspective is from our own side, as we just talked about. We have been in samsara for so long that our relationships have changed and shifted and molded and, did all those things. And we want to think from a positive angle, and all sentient beings have benefited us like anything, have been our best friends, have sacrificed so much for us, have helped us in multiple ways. So therefore, they must all be treated equally. We cannot discriminate amongst them because when they have all done the same thing for us, right? So this is how, from these two perspectives, we think about all kinds of good reasons why and how it is possible for us to develop impartiality towards them.
달금지 dinzarwa simje dungem ka simje jawado nyam dungem do nyam bi rang ngoni simje de rang en phama ma jo me ka di chen bo me to go na en dal dang din do do res go sai ta nyam ma tin se to gom se en gom rin le song sha so do wa ta nyel cha ba de ka de do se ne pomo do jo shi ba na yi che en wo ta gi di wo ta jawa thong ma me se re tang ka bi ge ta so pa se chu se ba de se do de la 다저 시발에 다기 응원지 체는 탐지세 다기 체 응원지 샤히 또 군장 편지 자등 쇠와이 체자 지들 늦자 샘게 해송받던 세워들 다시도 늦자 지도 저 몽골이야 인파스 쇠레 땅 다다나신 몽골 돌아와 다 차도 차바게 거야 누가서 뭐 this is it.
And so what we just explained about those two perspectives here are explained is that we could use these perspectives especially to cultivate a sense of impartiality or equanimity towards our enemies. Okay? That really our enemies are exactly like any other beings. They want happiness, they don't want suffering. And they have not always been our enemies, they have been our best friends and sacrificed us a lot. So when we think along those lines, then whatever anger and hostility we have, right, they subside, and we're able to have a really realistic perspective on this, right? Think about that. So that's how we can cultivate even-mindedness towards enemies. Now, in order to overcome, of course, temporarily our attachment to the friends, then we have to think in a different way, right? Yes, in this life, they have been very kind to us. We attract to each other. We attach. But in other lifetimes, they created a bunch of troubles, right? And we created a bunch of troubles for them. So when think about that, as here in the middle of page 37, we have daughter like the finest moon discourse sutra, right? So Chandrotama, she talks about how this girl, right, who spiritually evolved, says, what? Well, when I look at my enemies, right, well, you killed me many times before, and I killed you many times before. You dismembered my bodies like anything. I dismember your bodies like anything. So I really see no point of being attached to, the friends, so much. Right? This is the case. So that's why we look from another alternative way. That okay, if our friends we are so attached to in past lives, they hurt us. They did many other things. So there is really no good reason to be so attached to them in this lifetime only, right? And so that's how we try to develop a sense of impartiality towards the friends.
This is some balance. Not Nimeji, Yeveka, Sheva, that Daniel la new because I knew the journey, really, two Sabachati, Teen, Toja Yaga Dogosa, the Gibbon also. Koyimi Geshe, and the young told me that you are never maybe never told me that you was years on your own. So don't give up maybe never say I didn't do this or that. That was near Jal, you can't you didn't was on me on the Gonzana, and Chazan you can do this or that. You didn't share the land share, and he was can't get us on and do this or that.
So we are on still page 37, more towards the end. So it said that, just as we talked about this in the context of intermediate level practitioners, Kibuding, we talked about what's wrong with samsara, right? We can do it in many ways, but one of the possibilities says is that there are 8 faults, great faults of samsara. And so these are more related to the uncertainties in samsara, such as the status and position we have samsara, right? They are not fixed. We become rich and become poor, right? And we become high, we become low, and all of those things. And so also one of the things is relationship uncertainties, right? We become friends, enemies, stranger, and vice versa. So as we think about those things, what we really learned in the context of intermediate level practice, we should bring it here and use it. And so if we think about all these uncertainties, that kind of thinking can really tackle both attachment towards friends and hostility towards enemies. Because if things are shifting and changing, it is frivolous, to be sucked into some and hate the others like anything. There is no point,
Oh, they did down Shiva, Shirson, Shiva, Daniel, Londo Miguji, Daniel, but Gyeltsen, Shazang, Rishaba, and Gogo, so did that. Don't go at the Tata so get the dash and pen get Tata Red or Nordiomara. The Lord and dog of Maresina, and the Yen Shaya, Dal Near or Tisem dog. The dog with the Santa, never some thousand. In the end, the Mamone Sarava, Pemba Santa, the daddy will be Yama Pansaida, or two some of them. But Chardon Logia, the dog of Mugil, Daddy and that name, sir, Yen dies or this young Marisu.
No, sir. And so I stated that as we do that kind of contemplation, rationalization, critical thinking, the whole point is for us to be able to overcome our biased attitudes towards friends and enemies, right? Attachment to friends and hostility towards enemies. Okay? And if we succeed in doing that, then we have fulfilled the purpose of this thinking and practice. It's not that we should, like say, for example, in this life, there are friends and there are enemies, there are strangers, right? We are not saying that, okay, all these distinctions are false, right? I mean, these things exist. There are friends, there are enemies, but our attitudes towards them, if this gets changed, right, then friends and enemies, those recognitions exist is okay. We are not trying to say that, we should force ourselves to see our enemy as a friend in this lifetime, right? But what I'm saying is training our mind in the way we just talked about. If we can overcome our biased attitudes towards them, then that is the purpose of our practice.
어디 가라 고바 이노세 탐지 용디 넘버 저바네 고노 바발레 참베 시 셈기 윤네데 세르예베 사이힌디 제라 아니 닝지 스웨다는 데라드 신두 디게바 조로 테네 셈기 유 샤베 고네 닝지 샤보 고모 샤오 시에승베 샤바니 셈제는 두바다르 통에 이니 용 샤바 용 남바지인데 따님 곰베세 차단기 마님베 라운론 남 히데세 행사 렉버로 되었다 주와라 용 이동에 참배 취 렘버시니 이제 사본 중보다니 이제 시보델 교송바데 니힌디셔 고소스 너 디르다디 디궁고 따뇨고야 치기도 녜레 고르바 참배취 스미 줄렌데 세리에베 사히디스도 세리에와서 가서 hin가도 사단도 세르도 세야지 사고로 소소리 도도자 리룬 값이요 말에 세리에서 거라 어디 내가 들라에는 hin가 딱이나 에는 거동도 나서 째터야지 차고라 어디 나기 따님도 곰 비게 사이 되버서샤나 에는 현다디 간가 젤라가 돼서다 어디 전에는 tellinje 공부에는 영어 샤와도 주에는 더블라고 그랬어 어디 처음에 hin다 시험을 하는 놈도 쓰기도 와 어디 하는 놈 써야지 이 샤도로 가야 되나 어디 되지세
So establishing the basis for developing this attitude is explained under two subpoints. Number one, achieving impartiality towards living beings. Now we just finished talking about it. The second subpoint is having affection for all beings at the bottom of page 37. And so we have, this section opens with a quote from great Indian master Ajahn Kamal Shil's, the middle version of the stages of meditation, Bhavana Krama. And what is stated there is that the need to cultivate a sense of impartiality, equanimity in the beginning. Okay? If we do that well, then it becomes easier for us to cultivate all other attitudes such as love and compassion. And if we don't do a good job at this point in developing sense of equanimity, impartiality, then we may not be able to generate the required or necessary love and compassion that follows. And the example given here is, farmers at the right season, they had to prepare their field, isn't it? And so they need to plow the land, they need to fertilize it, whatever they needed to do. So when they have prepared the ground and the soil so well, the soil is so fertile and so ready to for cultivation. So then you can plant any seeds and you get really good crops. So just like that, cultivating impartiality or sense of equanimity is as important as that. So when our mind is ripened, so to speak, with a sense of equanimity, then it's much easier to cultivate the crops of love and compassion and the bodhicitta and all of the above.
니도 통해 참배시에 대한 것이 인식지부 성공중다 지금 대화도 있어봤는데 니히도 셔 또서 시리자 티 머레다 가르사 따뉴고야 돼 시기서와 근데 행사 비게 뭐뭐좀 하게 살리룽지라며 행가를 성공하게 돼 다가이가 이거 뭐지 지금 봐라 다가가 그냥 사티시现在到这批叫么吧？现在人些见那超了是不是？刚刚老养不家要嘛的。现在当用的养不刚刚苦用到说呢，你现在什么动作呢？一个人是，我这里对吧？
So the main point here that's made, quoting the Kamal Shila stages of meditation and so forth, on page 37 and over to 38, is when farmers prepare their land, right, and they make the soil, they plow the land, they even out the field, they use fertilizers, everything's prepared, then they can grow anything they like at the right season. Yeah. If they don't do that, right, they just kind of, took a bunch of seed and threw on it, well, some will grow, others will die, right? So it will be random, like something is growing and something is dying, So like that, if we don't cultivate a sense of impartiality or sense of equanimity, tangyom in Tibetan, we may cultivate love and compassion, but that is like this random growth, right? It's very biased. Yes, we have love for some and we have compassion for others, but then not for many others, right? If you want equal love and compassion for all beings, then preparing our mind, starting with sense of equanimity, is very crucial, so that we have the same love and compassion for all beings. Yeah.
어디 다다용 공사에 계셔. 와 다들 손에서 말고만 네서 다 마게티스 공부로. 어디 말고만 코 토마메 랑기 쪄라 토마메베시 나 쪄데 히와 유머를 셰데 코라 코와는 륜데 말란 샤와다 쇼데르 마게 샤와. 마게 샤와는 이메라스 말소베 닌디움 마주바 메데 사이무지 장발레 문드 무 유정본 데바니 강디케 마제파도 마 송바당 마시웨 쇼테네 게 통가오 아니 유정본 데바니 셈제강 케게 파맘 푸누 그래서 파맘 푸누 승몽 로보데 캠보 라맘 라메니 다우르 마조데네 예 통하고 해송소사 다디 간제 되지워다 마시에 공부해야 될 애니 상지야 엔 데베들 비게 딩예 파시뇽 말인 딩예 빈자 시뇽 말 딩예 거버니 시뇽 말이세 어 딘데 심지에 되는 통하요 뭐 상지 통마서 뭐라 상지 마서 매비자라
네.
그래서 초르비나 사자 되는 같아요 레스베 야갈 게 뭐 아래는 같아요 요 뭐서 들어 요 말아 사쇼 될 마게세야 니데 요 말에 다 둘라드단 다 가가 마마시카미를 토고 거라
So we're on page 38, and the next caption reads, cultivating a recognition that all beings are your mothers. Okay. So I think we have talked enough about cultivating a sense of impartiality. So let's say we have graduated from that level. So now we started to cultivate the recognition of a mother-child relationship among us and other sentient beings. Okay. And so what's stated there is this, that all beings have been our mothers, right, in samsara. And there is a quote from Sutra, and the sutras are considered as words of a Buddha, or at least Buddha blessed such words. And this is where Buddha said, when I look at sentient beings, I do not find anybody that I can point my finger at and say, you never become my mother or friend or relative or guru or whatever, right? I have nothing to do with you. No, everybody has been my mom, dad, sister, brother, sibling, boyfriend, girlfriend, all of those things. Okay, those are not the languages in Sutra, but you know what I'm saying. Maybe my second footnote there. So if Buddha has not seen, Buddha is an omniscient person, right? If Buddha did not see something, then that couldn't exist at all. So Buddha said, all sentient beings have become all kinds of things for me: mother, father, brother, sister, gurus, and all of that. So therefore, we cannot treat them differently. And another point is that, Buddha said, I cannot pinpoint any location in the universe that I have not been born there. So in samsara, any location, right, we cannot say, well, that part, and the example Geshe uses, we cannot say that, well, I've never been born in India, or I've never been born in America, right? I mean, we have been born in all parts of samsara, which means, by implicitly what I'm saying is, if we have been in every part of the samsara, or most of it, and all sentient beings have all kinds of relationships with us, so therefore we can conclude that we have this deep connection with sentient beings, isn't it? Yeah, and we call it in the figure of motherhood, right? Mother-child relationship.
해송소사 대양을 마시버 마시 마무바나 마시버 조앙 타예바 베테들 samrangi masheval ngeba tembo tsawa shadi dikena teni ti chin tembo so 젤라라 마게네 진정보 소지세 힘이 비셔로사 어디다 저도 스르르 모두 마시와 당만데 다 단다소야 이 타와토는 마시고 뭐 타와토 마도는 마시 뭐가 마고로
네.
저도 뭐봐도 마고로레시
네.
다디베 타제 그래서 다 그뭐까지 장바 타제 마오바도 상마지 바디 디제 까지 이거 디제 바 타제 어디 타제에서는 다 이제 마시 뭐야 뭐 계속나 이 마시베 내가 딘딘한테 다도 소 때리 막 까지 가지 장도 어디 섬어다는 이 딘딘한테 내라야라 마시야 될이 니 까지도 가야라 어디 때뭐시에서는 이 딘딘 진소대 내라야라
So it's explained that this is where we need to focus and work hard to be able to really develop, how should I say, this sort of sense of certainty or conviction in that all sentient beings have been our mothers. Okay? They have been our mothers many times before. They still will be our mothers so long as we are in samsara and we don't become Buddha, right? Once we become Buddha, then we probably don't need mother. But until then, we still need mothers. So sentient beings have been our mothers many times before, and they still will be our mothers. And so if we make every effort to understand that and to believe in that, okay, and then it will be easier for us to cultivate, remember the kindness of the mothers, right? That will be easier in the sense that we look at our mother of this lifetime, how much, how kind she has been and sacrifice she made. So it will be easier to remember the kindness. But the challenge we have is to be able to recognize or has developed that recognition of mother-child relationship among us and sentient beings. So this is where we need to focus and make every effort.
심지어 망보지 마시버데 수수 마시버데 나도 리베로 도도라 다 같이 껴 망벌는 거 이는 마티 찍랑 게 시대야 요 말봐 심지어 망보 수수 마시버데 나도 리베라네 도도야지 다 심지어 탐지 마시면 찍여요 말이야지 상지 송을 다 나도 디베타베 지는 세메 도도 말봐 그래서 다 망보 여다 야야시네 망보 걸야 좋아지 제도 상지 송 어때도 수수 가로지 다 세면도 주고 알아. 어디 유치 domne.
I think through reasoning, we would be able to maybe understand that we have had many mothers, okay? Because we have been born many times, so we couldn't have been born from the same mother all the times, So that logically we can say, if I have been born many times, I'm sure there have been many mothers, right? I have been born with, okay? So through reasoning, we can establish that and convince ourselves in that. Now that every sentient being has been our mother is a tough one. So we rely upon the words of a Buddha, right? An omniscient one who said that. Because for us, by our own logic, it's tough to say that every sentient being has been my mother, So combining our own reasoning and the authenticity of Buddha's words, then we say, yes, now all beings have been my mothers. And so develop that kind of feel that connection and conviction in that connection.
다 팀sem하고다 마시 검사하게 다 팀sem하고 검바니 심제다지 말고베 모두 토마라 첸디 네 말라 고나 깨뇨와세 포도시바다 검바샤데세 두두 만남바 세보히 세답라세 다들 뒤마시 고 통마메와니 디다기 마 텅레 데바시 시와인냥도 랭가시 사모사 어디 다데 마디 다데 소소 마디다 고마 데나다 마 고바도 가지 가다 고 마야 나바소 샤라여와 시다 마야 나바 세보수 둔세다 인 다다 마이베도 지오모고다 고와 소소 세델이야 인 펜다야디 소소 첸조 강가체 무스테나 하고 펜 가제다도 그 강가삼 다 대리체 네게 세마레 저 통마메네 마디 가리야 펜 가제데 다고 거라스 그래와 또 마직 시비 렌저 마보시러와 시다 렌저 마보시베 다다 세디 마시베 까디자도 소도 다 세메 두고러와 다 마시베 내가 강갈레 다나 나시까지자야데 리베 도터 샤러와 심지어스네 마피지까지 미자 피지 오바러와 시다 디네가 야께와 통마메 마보시베 까지 삼네 영조 흉샤용으로 와 도도 삼고
We are on page 38. And the second caption reads, cultivating a remembrance of their kindness or recollecting their kindness. And for this, great Kadamba Geshe Podaba advises us that we should first work with the kindness of mother of this lifetime. Okay? And so we can imagine a mother of this life, whether she's alive or she has already left us. But we have image of the mother, and to whatever extent we can recall what she has done for us, what the sacrifices and the hardships she has gone through for us, we should try to recollect that so that we feel mother's kindness, right? And then also we observe how other mothers are taking care of their kids, right? We can say that, yeah, I'm sure my mothers have some things I don't remember, but this is how the mothers are doing, right? Caring for their children. So my mothers have done the same thing. So through observational ways, we can also accentuate our remembrance of the kindness of the mother. And then we think that not only has she become mother in this lifetime, but she has become mother probably in other lifetimes as well. Okay? And as we think in these many ways, it really helps us to strongly generate the sense of remembering her kindness, And then slowly we can extend that notion to other sentient beings, Now, by logic, because what we have experienced in this life can be verified by our own valid perceptions, right? Valid cognitions. Well, I have witnessed it, all that. But that she became my mother before also, and other sentient beings, that we only have to use through logic and inference and inferential valid cognitions kind of thing, right? And so this, by doing all those thinkings, we can strongly feel her sense of kindness and sacrifices for us.
대다 마시베 두스 네바 탐지디 캡 펜데 탐지 조세 쳬버드 쳬데양 당봉예디 유령 버송 데는 제베 두스 무슨 네와 시 싱어와 시 샤예 줘자니 소모제 칼인 누효니 numbu케니 납케치 메존 라베 치기 탑나조제시 에니 경에메바 수 대양 대금지 뒤에서 사동당 캬베 뒤에서 그등 풍베 뒤에서 노르랑기 에네 제 메자완남 친 요지 남자 데라디 이네 멘지 에네 덱다 도다 땅에다 시지 샤다디 제니 쳔바인스 어디 다디 당기된 도된데 다디 까디 예시데 그래도 카세데 가데서 당보 가데서나 당보 베게 디시워스 카사 대들 마시베 두스 네와 탐지 짭 펜데 탐지 돈 다세데레나 쳬바 세데 당보니 예 나와 그런 거송 데네 마제네 에네 베게 소소디 베게 마이 다보 좀 마샹나 세사네 시도 찍 고구마라 시도 제가 시도 그러고 what she do today tell nya any be lagbe sumuzal salma ya shi lagbe nya ni ta sumuzal ying ni in ni sho ni numbu khal nyo sa ta ma khal ba dong sia di ba ba in nab de ke chi su da nab ji dan ke ji da lagbe shi ne ko bu sha de zhuo yao ma la bu shu xiao de ba就是su bu ne de de lagbe ma ji nab de dong de bu de na de ma zi kai chi de ba我的那开chi 메존 라베지 지니 엔 탑나도 이 엔 경험에 수 경험에 다 비게 가이야 레가도 되나 데 칼레가야 도제 지금 유시아서 차고로 되면봐 수 당황도 신데 부르 요거 유시는 왜 가가미 데려 저기 지금 말이야 어디데 유고레스 어디 가서 수에서로 수 대야 대금지 뒤에서 사동시다 또서는 또제자 검선의 실루야 차고에서 두로 요거야 근데 풍배 뒤도 다 풍배들 부고 쳔보야 사타들 좋아 야야 차도도 또는 랍당 줘야 쳔보 사서나 근데 랑 노르 제 거사 제메저와 남 치서 제메라서 소소 남이베 패센나시니야 쪽니 좋아 소소 베지 떠먹는 풀제리도 잘 센나메바 제고 그래서 in tagane usually this north get there tagas lela would ji ra sham jo maris rewa any college up, Tangin court, Etiwa Mambasa, you tell some shit. What did the college come in and Jan Yisha, my and the travel Jam Society, or they doing the shut does in the Caribbean. Hajan Kare, young issue was Shatang was the Shatang dog over the Ziajora. Pull another mal soon ago, push all mash in the gosh, or did it some lawyer?
No.
What that yes, some of them study Geshe of the Zara. Said the Marcadija, so that shakes us Hagura, that Chunga di Kadija, the Yagumari, just like Kadita Hagura. What is some good to see?
At the bottom of page 38 and over to page 39, are given some more specific details to think about how Mother has been very kind to us. We're thinking about the mother of this lifetime. We imagine her, and then we just thinking about in what ways she has been very kind to me. In the beginning, of course, she carried us in her womb for over 9 months, right? That's a tremendous, hardship and sacrifices she had to make. And then when we were delivered, right, she was so happy to welcome us, into the world. At that point, she said, whatever, I don't want you, left us, we will die in an hour or two, right? She didn't say that, she cherished us, and at that point, we were really helpless, right? We were just completely helpless. If Mother ignored us, we would be dead. She didn't do that. So that's why we survived is because of Mother's kindness. And then, of course, she always kept us as a baby closer to her, the warmth of her heart, right? And we can feel her warmth. And she cherished us so much that she didn't want to put us on the ground. She always carried in her arms breastfed us. She changed, of course, now today we have bottles and all that, so don't go there, the diapers. Good olden days, my footnote. She cleaned all our excrements and the fields with her hand. So even there's description how, like when we have a running nose, she even didn't use a handkerchief to rub it because our skin is so delicate at that point, right? So she even used her mouth, right? The soft lips of her mouth to clean our nose. She did so much. Of course, we wouldn't know that because we were just, this little. But observing how other mothers did it, so we remember that. And then, of course, so when we were hungry, she was very sensitive to our needs, right? What is my child needs? She feed us. When we were thirsty, she feed us milk, and we were, feeling cold or something. She would buy clothes, and she did everything she could. And then as we come of age and need to go to school, then now whatever resources she has, she just use it to support us. And these resources did not come very easily. They did not drop from the sky or grow from the earth. She earned them through her sweat and blood. And in the process, she created many bad karmas too, probably involved, right? But she did all that lovingly, and I think that she even, maybe a sense of sort of a stinginess. She even couldn't use those things for herself, her needs that she cherishes, and now she's ready and happy to use, right? Those resources to educate us and, to fulfill our needs as we grew up. And so we have to think about all this, hardships and, sacrifices she have been through. Her whole life saving is put on us in many ways, So as Geshe was kind of giggling, it's not like, how the monks receive money gifts. That's kind of pretty easy, right, you're getting. But it's not like the mom has been through so much trials and tribulations, sweat and blood and, all that to make that living. And then she spent that on us. So when we are in difficult situations and our life is in danger, mom really wish, only if my child could have said, I'm ready to die. If there's such thing as I can die for in his place or her place, I'll do that. That's the kind of mom mindset, So all these details, we should consider to be able to feel really strong sense of kindness of, mother towards us. And she has done most of these things willingly. Mom didn't say today I'm really tired and so you're not going to eat. No, it doesn't matter, rain or shine or tired or not tired or maybe fainting. She still cares about the child and does everything she could. And my for the footnotes until she's dead, then she can do anything. So, I mean, so much sacrifice. So we should consider all that to remember the kindness of our mother.
다 너는 시제다 nin제게 펜데 강이도 내가 당 동네 탐지 세와 시비 최남라 제제도 세바고 대다 고메 티제베 로책도 멤버기 깨봤나 다 데다 너들도잖아 가지 내가 탐지 소술 말 희제 가제이나 가지 내가 가제이 뭐랑 내가 가제이 시에다 펜데 두야 내가 가제이 줘봐 두시에 가리야고 삼선은 거네 자자 마르다 그냥 마까지 심어야야 삼 이 칼라와 좀 코고는 야 유주를 내서나 들어도 공부해서 다와 까지 심어야 그냥 마드 까지 레자서 해서나 인데 공 다데 거자서네 녜시 다시 강가시 이 심여타지를 비비자 다다 말께와 나시 로지기도나 인 마시게 깨베 체도 인서 대대샤고 말에 대알기로나.
So the bottom line is this: whatever condition she's in, maybe she's well educated, maybe she's completely illiterate, maybe she has a lot of abilities, maybe she has no abilities, but doesn't matter. Regardless of her situation, I mean, she did everything she could to protect us from the harms and to support our life, right? And so that's all mothers did that, regardless of their abilities, education background, status, it doesn't matter, And so thinking that way, if we truly feel a sense of kindness in our heart and mind about mother, then it's not just a lip service, isn't it? We really feel it inside. And now we started to kind of nurture that feeling and extend it to other beings, right? Then slowly, so we can feel that all beings have been the same kind to me because they have all been mothers, right? And so whenever we develop that sense of kindness towards all beings as having been our mothers, so that means we have that kind of a experience, if you say experiential understanding, or maybe it's a realization of recollecting the kindness of the mothers. So with that, we will stop there today. So that is the second point, cultivating a remembrance of the kindness, and we yield to you for question, answers, observations. Well, Latmir is sitting on the back, so I have to cue you so that he may start, and then we might have questions more.
If I remember, Pabongkapa says that this realization of the recognition of all sentient beings having been our mothers is the most difficult to realize, along with seeing the Guru as the Buddha.
Right.
Can Geshe talk about the difficulty of realizing that, and what is the measure of having achieved that realization?
Right. Korangi tishugudu peje korangi ten yagu sevena gelje pabong gagi roage lamding tasungre denali ya ngune semchen thamje rangi mashebe masheke di ro tokod masan roage be mas khagbo rest roage bena cha chavanda ji nganzo ina de ro rangi en lama de ge sanjing ngwe yin samji samye jo roage di na shi rest de ja gen gi kongba khante ina di thola tesma de she roage masheke de khalo de en kebe cher de khante ngwe jin tu ge roage semchen thamje lo
거기 세베게 다다게 지지로 다가서 소소 마다다 디카디데 뭐 곰니 이네 다 뭐네 자상 마디카디시 버려야 섬 로지 종송아 다티 종네네 녜다 다강가베 이네 거루 심제 탐제면 다 소소 체니 말 미고 나싱기 피게 이네 지게도도네 이네 마시게도 버려서 제 다다디네 제샤도 다 맛있게 가버려. 다 맛있게 가버렸어요. 나게 그 뭐가 그 착하고 싶다 도지. 다 그래서 멋있다. 나 가서 신이 된 주세요 되더라. 다 티가 가리 뭐 야, 탑시도 가르쳐서 다 맛있게 하게 탑시 유네면들 다 되게 가지 껴가지다. 껴 통하면서 상도 하더라. 다 뒤도는 마도고 와다.
네, 가보셔야 되고.
다 롱가운데서는 상식 등이 심지 건사 소소 마시면데 캠보시면데 生意通嘛送我是吧？
no,
我觉得这就是他没有了，生意嘛都没加是吧？
not it.
我他真正都现在还主要了嘞，
Tadi piji mangse kien tanda kiawa ngachi mangse mangse lungla ten do there se chagum ra
他
ngaso.
叫我是得必须
리베 두고.
日本住过的，
No so.
他甚至必须忙不进是马去都是日本多住是吧？
对
是说忙不叫我黑浪子去，我这叫忙不啷个马进他在这地嘛那一天上决定嘛是吧？
No,
甚至现在几个是吧？
no so.
忙不去叫我等我做好苦过了他。
No.
자 심지 탐지 자스는 심지 창고라요 말을 되는 거 채요 말을 띵가서 하고 말아 뭐 망고지 깨한테 다 리베도도 저
No so.
어디래 다 마스 버니요 요 말이 상지게 있는 게 마동 숨자 이제 지고라
I don't know so.
디저치다
No. Geshe agrees with that. Yeah, it is really difficult to develop that realization of mother-child relationship among us and sentient beings. So it's like in some way parallel to, guru devotion practice. So seeing our teachers as Buddhas. So that said, as we have just talked about, much of this is really dependent upon our conviction in the life before the rebirth, isn't it? So if we can. And so I was asking Geshe, so that means do we have to rely on, the scriptural authority or the Buddha that know that life before, right? He said, no, that part is actually we established through reasoning, And as he said before, through reasoning we can understand that there have been life before, And so we can, through inference do that. We have been born many times, so many times we had mothers, right? That part we can do reasoning. But now that every sentient being has been our mothers, we really have to rely upon Buddha's word. Just like Buddha said in the sutra, I don't find any sentient beings who has not been my mother, father, guru, whatever, right? So we rely upon such scriptural validity or the authenticity. And so first I think we really need to work with mother of this lifetime. To the extent we can feel her kindness in our, in the marrows of our bones, so to speak, then it will be easier to extend it to the others, But if we fail to do with our mother of this lifetime, it's rather a tall claim to say that now we have to feel the same way with all other sentient beings. Yeah. Any other questions, observations? I'm looking everywhere in case somebody needs. Yes, Rena, yeah.
From a practical point of view, we talked about treating people equally, and then sometimes we say having an equal attitude towards people. So to me, we seem to be using them interchangeably, although it sounds like when we're talking about equanimity, we should focus on equal attitude, because I don't think it's appropriate to treat everybody the same way. You don't have,
Sure.
What does Geshe have to say?
Tanda di Quran ki kandi shwe di ta tanda nganzo tangyum kume shor wa gen. Semjen thamja la ya ta tangyum kume se di ko sta sem gi wa gen. Pa nge ta gi di la bin sa da tangyum kum sa na semjen thamja ta nyamba chi kumbar wa gen. Nyamba cheben semjen thamja la ya ta nganzo gi pa chedan chejo da nyamba chi kumbar wa gen. So the manan sidi ka la da semjen thamja la ya nganzo chedan chejo da nyamne digwe na so wa gen. Da sem gi chedan de wa. Kerso de nyamba ma do semjen thamja la ba da ji kharso gorda. chedan chejo jorwage di injimi nyamba yongshingre bage de yung marwa sgorda
시정 시정 냠바
ta chele sgorwage da
chile pejer da 심지 탐 소소 주성의 냠고다 심지 탐 소소 자 시어 니니 시어리 펜도 뇌게 뭐 들어 섬었던 딩갈이야 펜시어다 니시라 펜요 말세 요 말와 그지 냠도 어디 더불어
no so yeah Geshe thinks that, yes, the emphasis is more on cultivating the attitude, equality towards beings. But if we do that well, then I think we also will find treating them equally. Because right now we look at our attitudes, right? We treat some as enemies or friends like that. So because of these attitudinal differences, our reactions and how we treat them are very different because of the attitude. But if we see all as friends, then we will treat them as friends. So it follows from that. But of course, the emphasis is on cultivating the attitude in the beginning.
세 내리신다 펜도게 너지 강자 가가 셔줘라.
네.
타지와 타마다니 니바메 선거도 내 어느 찍어 쳐거라.
No.
이 뭐다.
Right. But Geshe said, in terms of this lifetime, as we said, still maybe our attitude may be in some sense equal towards them, but then we also kind of in reality confront there are some people who really are sort of like enemies, you know. So whatever, I mean, in this case, what is it? 다 자유에서 와. 근데 여자 자들이야 당한테 제조디 만다를 차르고. 다 이제 셈이 따다 되고 그러게.
되죠. 다다야 돼. 다다도 그러잖아. 다다 수 네바지바 된 다다고.
알아요.
요. 다다고 유대도 차고로. 제가 또 다네바지게 가져지 가가 네바지 당아 찍바 페도 당아 찍바 차고로.
Okay, so I missed the missing thing. So you said, in this life, we have friends, enemies, strangers, because we are looking at them from different perspectives, right? Somebody who harm us, hurt us, we say enemies, you know. If we look from that point of view, then everybody becomes enemies, you know. And so we're trying to look at from the positive angles, you know. Yeah.
I'm thinking about His Holiness and how you can see sometimes he's affectionate and playful with some people, and sometimes he's very firm with other people.
Yeah.
So I'm sure
right?
His Holiness has equal attitude, but yet in this situation, what's needed is this particular interaction and in that situation.
Sure, yeah. Alla morang dit nes sendigdo da bena konsikyang gwe chimbu cho chashab ina robage simje tamdel ya tende kongba sheje chigban yires da ine yan zamzamli ya kunji chiro namba ten nanda cho robage dar minda ba kasheli ya bsira tu ni zu zo robage na kasheli ya yan ku tes ba karso tes chagu shugoro da chagu senemida tes jongur stenen gdo wa 어차 딘데 기 찾아 거다 cheda mandar shungdo
지도도 민다 야. 다 가게 정보 제 정보 누구야 드려요. 가지 꾸이는 거서 뮤지엄보다 뮤지엄에서 니기 답이 기우면서 그 독자들이 뒤올라 코로나 이럽지 갑디서 뭐 수해다 두배는 데려다 제재 기보라고 가세요. 그래서 다자도 제재 기보라고 최소는 인터넷에 뒤도 봐 가지고 제가 비만 코피만 그가 개와서 배 기부 인사는 비만 동게 코로나 이주 인터넷 비만이 다 제재 기보 고랄 비만도 왔다. 코로나 비만 다 엉텅보지 코로나 인삼 가지지 왔다. 아따따리 비만 야부 싶죠. 이제 가리면서 맞다도. 내 고다다다서 외쳐져라. 야쇼스. 그걸 나와줘 좀 다 비만이 야부 주다고. 거기 비만도 더라. 비만도 더다. 근데 강서 사실 비만 타버지 이제 대니 이제 고다 놈도베 찍거디 제다. 찍거지는 제대로 딱딱으로 상신나 희동도 고 냠도 동도 고요도.
나래.
다들 타마데 상신 이바다를 매셔. 그건 독도는 깨져로. 근데 제대로 라게 동도 시가시 깨져로 시면도 저거. 근데 거 뽑아 차라.
알아서.
신에 거 최소니 거 지금하고 대충
나래. Yeah, that's a good point. It says, that has to do with the skillful means of the upaya, right? We have the same attitude, but, according to certain situations, right, that we might, have to display different, action orientations, so to speak. And that's why I think in the Buddhist literatures, we talk about, all those different activities, peaceful, wrathful, right, increased activities, right? And sometimes there is an understanding that to be able to deal with some, troublemakers, they only understand their language. So therefore, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas might look very violent, because they said this is the only language they understand. But in their heart, they have the compassion. They cannot be violent, And the example Geshe has given is of a great, musician at the time of the Buddha called Tsegyebu Rabka. He thought he was the best musician, right, in that part of the world. And something like that. So Buddha needed help. Buddha cannot say, come here, I'll give you teaching. That wouldn't work. And so Buddha himself played the music, right? And one day, sort of in his vicinity, he played the music. And so he thought, wow, that's a damn good like me. How could that be? So he thought there was nobody like him. And then he invited him, right, at Buddha's manifestation, right? So, okay, come and play with. So they both play, and they were equally good. Yeah. So he was amazed. And then what happened was, Buddha started to take it was fiddle they were playing, right, string out. So, and he was doing exactly the same thing. So they both played it on one string, and he was good too. So at one point, Buddha took the whole string, and he was still playing it, right? Then he thought, how is this working, So his kind of arrogance he's like, oh, this is really interesting. Without a string, he can play this one. And then Buddha had a chance to tell him about the Dharma, right? Why something is possible. So like that, I think in terms of skillful means upaya, there could be different reactions, as you were probably indicating that. If not, I have a prayer request for maybe many of you know that Melissa Matthiessen passed away on November 4th, and and she's a good friend of Tibet, so we pray for her and others as well. Melissa Matthiessen more lo kazan chong duwa lo tukju re den di tongmen kimchen naronas. And so I have announcement so that you can prepare for this. December 5th, that's the weekend, Saturday, and that will be Gandeng Amche. Right, it is related to the Lama Tsongkhapa's days, as we call it, Lama Tsongkhapa Day. That weekend will be Nyungne, Chenrezig fasting retreat. Okay, so Saturday, as many of you have done the fasting retreat, it is 2 days, right? And so Saturday it'll start and it'll complete on the Sunday. So there will be no regular Sunday teaching because it's a fasting retreat practice. But Saturday is the Gandeng Namche Lama Tsongkhapa Day. He's passing away, so we will do Tsok offering. Okay, and so if you need to work on your worksheet or calendars, you want to participate in that, we're just announcing it ahead of the time. December 5th, okay, and the 6th. Nyung ne chwa ke Gandeng Namche ka le ya di shu xiang long. Kene de Shadong Golo Gebe, Yawodon, General Keva Sambu, Sangedo, Kala Kandi, Tela, Dedemba, Jumba Chere, Silla, Chanze, the Omani Beme, 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 Omani Beme. Omani Beme Ori, Gawadi, Yoda, Jere, Sewan, Rujonen, Dowachi Yamar, Deyazala, Gaba, Sho, Kangi, Lode, Jimye, Dinda, Ninda, Namda, Rasa, Chinyan, Dungun, Chishin, Sishe, Nije, Tuwan, Lebamze, Kanda, Sibe, Zera. Mendon Dongwen Geshe, Zhozhou Gongla, Boje Daze, Yanla Zhozhu, Yangden Song, Zhoda, Cheto, Nyemo, Nyelo, Leje, Chado. Mense Dongwen Nyugo, Jinye, Zhenze, Raji, Nan, Duenen, Daji, Saju, Tazu, Yende, Lunzhou, Gyase, Tuyu, Gu, Chuda, Chuda, Chun. Jambe Yanla, Du, Omara Bazana, Omara Bazana, De, Senden, Kuje, Yara, Vese, Yen, Dalu, Timo, Mimba, Rasene, Kada, Tenju, Shunglu, Dok, Lodembo. Now those Lord Gyeltsen, Yutong Bega Jin, Geshan Pongwei, Judo, Minba Xin, Denba Zinla, Wangdo Yi, Tangnian Chugun Jula, so on page 21. Obeisance to my Guru and Protector Manjushri, who holds at his heart a scriptural text, symbolic of his seeing all things as they are, whose intelligence shines forth as the sun, unclouded by delusions or traces of ignorance, who teaches in 60 ways with the loving compassion of Father for his only Son, all creatures caught in the prison of samsara, confused in the darkness of their ignorance, overwhelmed by their suffering. You whose dragon thunder-like proclamation of Dharma arouses us from the stupor of our delusions, free us from the iron chains of our karma, who wills the sword of wisdom, hewing down suffering wherever sprouts appear, clearing away the darkness of ignorance. You who have been pure from the beginning, who have completed the stages achieving the highest perfection of a bodhisattva, whose princely body is down with the 112 marks of a Buddha, I bow down to you, Manjushri, Om Arabaza Nadi. O compassionate one, with the brilliance of your wisdom, illuminate the darkness enclosing my mind, enlighten my intelligence and wisdom so that I may gain insight into Buddha's word and the texts that explain them. Page 31. Like the sweet perfume of white lotus, born in the ocean of knowledge, nourishing honeybees, the fortunate beings, your fame pervades all directions. You are proficient and powerful in upholding the precious doctrine. To you, O Lobsang Tenzin Wangda, respectfully I pray.
Nhất tâm kính lễ Đức Văn Thù Sư Lợi, bậc đại trí ngài đều phục hai chướng ngại, tựa nhật quang lan tỏa khắp mười phương, bậc thực chứng chân nghĩa màu rốt ráo, từ tim ngài bát nhã kinh thủ hộ nhiệm màu, cõi luân hồi chúng sanh thọ nghiệp báo, bị ngăn che bởi phiền não vô minh, sở hữu 60 pháp âm thủ thắng, cùng đại bi ngài hóa độ chúng sanh, tựa từ mẫu chăm lo cho quý tử. Tiếng rồng vang ngài thức tỉnh hữu tình, thoát khỏi vòng luân hồi nghiệp chướng. Tận diệt muôn vàn khổ đau cùng ách nạn, trường tử Như Lai tối thắng toàn giác, ngài an trụ nơi thập địa pháp vân, báu thân ngài trang nghiêm thanh tịnh, 112 tướng hảo Như Lai, đê đầu đảnh lễ Đức Văn Thù Sư Lợi, cúi xin ngài tận diệt ám chướng vô minh. Om Arapasanadi, con khẩn cầu dưới gót sen bậc đại trí, ban pháp lực diệt phiền não vô minh, được trí sáng con thâm nhập nghĩa màu, pháp vi diệu cùng muôn vàn luận giải. Đản sanh nơi trí thủ thắng đại dương, hàng thiện căn như ong mật thọ nương, hồng danh ngài khắp mười phương quảng bá, đấng thiện xảo uy dũng bảo tồn pháp bảo vô giá. Nam mô Lobsang Tenzin Wangdak, xin cung kính trì niệm.
ni yon do yo